Good evening and welcome to this evening's panel discussion. The theme for Constitution Day this year is Building One Nation St. Martin, and it's being commemorated with two events, of which this evening is the first. The purpose of this panel discussion is to improve the knowledge of our local residents on their rights as citizens of St. Martin, as well as their rights as voters of Parliament. The discussion will be touching on topics such as the role of Parliament and the task of a parliamentarian, Constitution of St. Martin, and understanding the constitutional rights as a citizen of St. Martin. At this time, to officially open this evening's proceeding and to welcome you, I'd like to welcome the Honorable Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports Affairs, Silveria Jacobs. Please welcome her.
It is wonderful for me to stand here. I'd like to say welcome to all our invited guests, panelists, as well as dignitaries from various levels of government. I see MP Pontiflet here. I see Mrs. Oldine Bryson Pontiflet, Mr. Plantain, SG of ECYS, as well as interim SG. Thank you for being here. The Ombudsman, in her capacity as one of our panelists, our expert on the Constitution, Mr. Julio Romney, Mrs. Guichard Joubert as the SG of Parliament, and also arriving, Dr. Arundel. I apologize in advance for her. She had a personal engagement with family, so she will be a tad late, but it is a special occasion for her family, so she will be here in time to make her presentation, I'm sure. And I'm sure that the proceedings will be enlightening, informative, and will create a dialogue that has been so necessary on this and so many other topics as pertains to St. Martin. Recently, the Culture Department organized workshops, including a symposium, with the aim to start a dialogue towards recognizing and building on our natural and cultural heritage. And the theme of that one was forging a national identity. And that conversations, I see several of the participants here, really, it was not as widely attended as this. And I believe a lot of information that was disseminated there and the discussions there, many of you would have liked to take part in. So I hope from here on in, we'll continue to see the interests of the general public in these conversations, in these dialogues, as we move forward towards making the decisions that have been pending for so long. The identity versus nationality was discussed at length, and it will continue to be discussed and dialogued until we come to a decision, but I do believe that the people of St. Martin must have a say in all that is said and done and decisions that are made in the best interest of you, the people. The St. Martiner that we are waiting to define within our Constitution, which is to date not yet defined, is not so much in our status, a nationality, but an identity. Who do we identify with as ourselves as St. Martiners? And I know for each and every one, you can probably come up with another definition. But as a matter of fact, the cultural framework policy has suggestions which will come under consideration and discussion. The St. Martiner by birth, the St. Martiner by naturalization, or the St. Martiner by heritage. To which degree of heritage is for us to decide. So that's why the conversation, and many have left that conversation aside because it can bring up all sorts of conflict. But until we have that discussion and that dialogue and make those decisions, we will hang in limbo. And so I do believe that as a people, we have come too far without making that definition, and it is high time that we do that. So that is one of my priorities as Minister of Education, to make sure that this gets done. And with your help, I believe we can. Some of the questions that you hear, should the born St. Martiner, quote unquote, with Dutch nationality, of naturalized parents have the same rights as a St. Martiner by heritage? These are the tough questions. By defining who is a St. Martiner by heritage, by whichever formula we define, are we then excluding all of those who are second and third generation St. Martiners of immigrant parents and feel a deep bond to this island, this land, and the people? With all the intermingling of marriages, etc., how do we then delineate and separate when we are indeed trying to unify? For some, this is a moot point, but I'll just throw it out there. Should the Constitution define us and protect us? And why? For land, for opportunity, or just to be able to say that I am a St. Martiner? Is it in fact too late? Is it? To my surprise, the other day, as minister, one of the workers, policy workers within one of the departments, there's a policy in government whereas if you have received study financing and you come back and work for government, you get a reduction on the amount you have to pay back. And so this young man applied, and to his surprise, he does not qualify. He holds a Dutch passport. He was not born here, but he spent his entire life here. So he came here as a toddler with his parents. And in the policy, it says, only landskinderen. So I said, oh, we do have some type of definition after all. But it is something that it's taken from the laws of the Netherlands Antilles. And so the landskind refers to all children born within the Netherlands Antilles of Dutch nationality back then. And it still counts today because we have not made that change. So day by day, in your work, things pop up. And so, does he find that fair? Would you find it fair? Had you grown up here and this is the only home you know, you went abroad, you studied, you come back, you're contributing to the growth of your country and you're told, no, you do not qualify for that reduction. So that's why I asked that question. That's why I asked that question. And I know the debate will be interesting, to say the least. So the dialogue has begun, and I'm proud to be able to stand here as Minister of Culture and of Education to be able to push and make this a priority. It has been, I must say, within the Department of Culture, just sitting there waiting to be pushed. And certain definitions are already there. But I felt in no way can we just pick it up, put it in a document, agree in a council of ministers, send it on to all of the different councils, and then have the representatives debate it in Parliament without hearing and having you take part in these discussions. So that's what these discussions are about. And as the year progresses into next year, 2017, we hope to be able to have even more consultations with the people, and then hopefully, by this time, have a document that we can take and send on to Parliament. Because while many say Parliament makes the laws, actually, for the most part, Parliament has only been approving of the laws. And you will hear more about it from the professionals on it. I'm not going to try to sit or stand in their shoes today, but I thank you for being here. I thank you for being part of the dialogue. Keep an open mind. The questions you have will be pertinent and important as we move forward, and we as government will definitely take note of what you, the people, are saying. Thank you for being here. Thank you for contributing to the growth of St. Martin. And have a wonderful Constitution Day when it comes tomorrow. Tomorrow is just the church service, but that's also very important in terms of us recognizing where we are today as pertains to where we were and, of course, where we would like to be, because we would like to one day be able to say we are St. Martiners by nationality as well. And for that, we must be independent, and that's where we must strive to be. Thank you.
First of all, I would like to wish everybody a happy Constitution Day in advance for tomorrow. And I would also like to thank the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports, as well as the staff members of the ministry for the opportunity to give you all a presentation on the role and the task of Parliament this evening. I'm going to jump right into it. What is a parliament? A parliament in most jurisdictions around the world is a legislative and elected body of government. The three main functions are: the parliament represents the population, the electorate. Secondly, the parliament legislates, makes laws. And thirdly, the parliament supervises government in all its doings. The parliament, in its current form, as we know it, has its basis in ancient Greek times, where there was a system of direct parliamentary democracy. You need to imagine that, of course, the populations were much smaller, making this easier for citizens to come together and have a direct say in their governing. I must say, though, that with citizens, I mean, first of all, only male citizens, so slaves, females, children were all excluded. The citizens had to be also of a certain age. And thirdly, the citizens had to possess land, so they had to be wealthy. So you can imagine that with those criteria, you already exclude a great part of the population. From the Greeks to the Romans to the more medieval times, we've seen a development in parliaments and also in the power that the parliaments have. What do I mean with that? For example, in the medieval times that you had a king with all the power, and basically the parliament, its only role was to be of an advisory body. I already touched on the composition in ancient times of parliaments, but it's only in the beginning of the 19th century, 1917, 1920, that the right to vote was also expanded to women, and first of all, to a greater part of the male populace, but then eventually also to women. I just want to give you a brief historic view on what it is a parliament really is. I'm going to jump now right back to our current situation, because I guess that is what you want to hear about, our parliament. Our parliament is the system which is a system that was invented, let me call it that, by a French philosopher called Montesquieu. And basically, the idea behind the trias politica is that there are three branches within government. First of all, the legislative branch. Secondly, the executive branch. And thirdly, the judicial branch. I don't think we're going to focus so much on the judicial branch this evening, but more so on the legislative, and maybe we might jump back and forth between the legislative and the executive. In our current constellation, the legislative is the parliament. I'm going to put a note there, I'm going to come back to that. The executive in our constellation is the Council of Ministers, comprising of 7 ministers. In our Constitution, it is in Chapter 4 that we have several articles that stipulate the rules of the Parliament. And I'm going to, give me 1 second so I can open it up and refer to the correct articles, starting with Article 44 of the Constitution. Article 44 of the Constitution stipulates, like I said before, one of the main functions of Parliament and of our Parliament, which is that the Parliament represents the entire population of St. Martin. Now, this is very important. Why? Because recently we had an election on the 26th of September, and as you might have noticed, several candidates on different party lists obtained a number of votes. For example, you have candidate A, who obtained 200 votes. That means 200 eligible voters voted for this particular candidate. However, The moment this person, and we're going to assume now that this person, candidate A, became a member of parliament with this 200 votes. The moment that this candidate A becomes a member of parliament, he or she no longer represents the 200 votes. This person represents, along with the other 14 members of parliament, the entire population of St. Martin. And that is something crucial to keep in mind. Secondly, presently, according to Article 45 of the Constitution, the parliament consists of 15 members. There is a possibility, however, maybe in the near future, and I've been told that most likely in the next election, which will take place in 2020, the number of parliamentarians will increase to 17. Why is that? Because Article 45, paragraph 1, states that when the population of St. Martin is 60,000 or more, I should say between 60 and 70, then the number of parliamentarians will increase to 17. The moment that the population increases from let me rephrase. If it surpasses 70,000 and it is within 70 and 80,000, the number of parliamentarians will become 19. The moment we have more than 80 registered persons on St. Martin, the number of parliamentarians will become 21. So right now it's 15, but we have the possibility of growth within the next few years until 21 members. Article 46 of the Constitution, this is an important part, which is the term of parliament. In Dutch, the zittingsduur. The term of parliament is 4 years. Now, you might have noticed that the term of the current parliament was cut short. It is only 2 years, and that is really an exception to the rule because Article 46 of the Constitution clearly states that it's in normal circumstances, it is 4 years. But again, if there is some sort of crisis in government or whatever have you, it can be shortened, the parliament can be dissolved, and then the term will be less than 4 years. Now, Article 48 and 49 of the Constitution are very important, starting with Article 48 that stipulates who are the persons who are able to vote. There are a few requirements. First of all, the person has to be a citizen, a registered on St. Martin. The person has to have the Dutch nationality, and finally, the person has to be 18 years or older. Article 49 now stipulates who is able to postulate themselves as a candidate. So, who can we vote on? Which are the requirements for such? First of all, again, a resident of St. Martin, you need to be registered here. You have to have the Dutch nationality and also 18 years or older. And additionally, you do not have to be excluded from the voting right. Like I mentioned to you before, we started off with the trias politica, the 3 different branches within government, the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. And one thing you have to keep in mind, these branches, they need to operate as independently as possible from one another. And in order to ensure that, you need to take a look in Article 51 of the Constitution. Because Article 51 states that members of parliament cannot be at the same time, so while they are a member of parliament, they cannot be a governor, they cannot be the acting governor, they cannot be a member of the Council of Advice, a member of the General Audit Chamber, ombudsman, minister, and this is where the trias politica comes in also, or the minister plenipotentiary, an active civil servant, or a member of the judiciary. Article 52 regulates the bloodline between members of parliament. For example, spouses cannot be a member of parliament at the same time. Also, if you're a member, your parents and your grandparents and your children cannot be a member of parliament along with you at the same time. I'm going to jump over a few articles because there are many and all of them are equally important, of course, but some a little bit more. Article 56. Article 56 stipulates the oath that members of parliament have to take before taking office. Now, we just had parliamentary elections, as you know, on the 26th of September. The Central Voting Bureau has made known who the 15 elected members of parliament are. According to the electoral ordinance, a whole process will start up. The Central Voting Bureau will start sending letters to the members of parliament elect. The members of parliament elect have a certain period of time to react, to accept or not, because they can say no too. I don't think they will, but the possibility is there to say no. And they have to respond within a certain period of time. The next step, according to the electoral ordinance, is to submit the credentials, or the geloofsbrieven as they call it in Dutch, to the Parliament of St. Martin. And that is then the moment that the credentials are officially submitted to Parliament, and then Parliament knows exactly who will be taking up the function of members of Parliament. What do we do with the credentials? We schedule a public meeting of Parliament, and the old Parliament will approve these credentials. Now, when the credentials are approved, the next step would be, in order for someone to become a member of Parliament, is to take the oath or promise administered by the governor. And most likely that will take place in the morning hours of October 31st. So 2 requirements: approved credentials and administering the oath or promise. Article 57 of the Constitution, also very important. The article stipulates that the Parliament will choose from their own membership a president or chairperson and vice chairpersons or presidents. Paragraph 3 of the same article states also that the Parliament is the one that appoints, dismisses, or suspends the Secretary General, in this case, my person. The Secretary General has a secretariat to his or her disposal, and I'm going to go into that a little bit later to explain a little bit more what the Secretariat is within Parliament and what it is that the Secretariat does. Article 58, also interesting, it regulates the salaries, the pension, and other entitlements of members of Parliament, and that is then again regulated in a separate law. So basically, Article 58 gives the legal basis for this law, and in a separate law called Pensioenregeling Politieke Gezagdragers, you will get the details pertaining to the salary, pensions, and uitkering, etc. Article 59, you probably heard this one a few times in the media. A very important article, and it goes most of the time hand in hand with Article 33 of the Constitution, which is the vertrouwensregel, as they call it in Dutch, and it's basically the rule of confidence or non-confidence if there is no longer confidence. But basically, Article 59 states that the Parliament can be dissolved by a national decree. And that is exactly what's going to happen on October 31st. There was a national decree, I believe it was published sometime in December of last year, 2015, and in there it was stipulated that, one, we're going to have elections on September 26th, and secondly, that the Parliament will be dissolved on the 31st of October. Now, sometimes there's a misconception out there that the Parliament is already dissolved. That is not the case. The Parliament is going to be dissolved on the 31st, and that is also the date that the new Parliament will be installed. Article 60 of the Constitution, one of the important, along with Article 61, two important matters First of all, the parliament meetings are in principle always public, except if a certain amount of members deems it necessary to close the door, but in principle always public. And two, you need a certain amount of members present at the parliament meeting in order to, first of all, start the meeting and to deliberate. If you normally follow parliament meetings, sometimes you would say, but hey, I read in the paper that the meeting is supposed to start at 10. It's 10:15, nothing yet. The reason for that is that, like I said before, in Article 61 states that you need half plus one of the members of parliament. In this case, because we have a 15-member parliament, you need 8 members present to be able to start up a meeting, to deliberate, and to take decisions. And with 8 members present, I mean they need to physically be in the hall, and most importantly, they have to sign the attendance sheet that is always on the griffier's desk. When that is completed, the 8 signatures and the 8 members present, then the meeting can start.